Hey, what is going on, guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video we're going to be making an assassin tier list, so ranking every assassin in the game based on their current power level. There's going to be 5 different tiers ranging from S+, which is going to be OP, down to C, which is garbage. So with that being said, guys, let's get right into it. Alright, so let's start things off here with Ahri. I don't know, Ahri's rated as an assassin or classified as an assassin. You could say she's like a mix between an assassin or a mage, but we're gonna rate her in the video anyways, and she's gonna be placed in the A tier. So I just feel like Ahri's always a pretty consistent mid lane pick. She's never really super OP, she's never really super weak, and I feel like that's the state she's in right now. When I think of Ahri, I don't really think of like a super strong champion. I just kind of think of a pretty fair champion, a pretty balanced champion right now. So I do think you can climb with her in solo queue for sure. But when I think of like an S+ or an S tier assassin champion right now, Ahri doesn't really come to mind. And the champions I'm gonna place in S and S+, I just feel like they do have a little bit more solo carry potential than Ahri does. So next up here for Akali, she's gonna be placed all the way down in the C tier. I think Akali is probably the weakest assassin in the game right now. I'm pretty sure most players wouldn't really argue with that. The champion's been nerfed repeatedly over the past couple months, and she's just in a really bad spot. The champion's just been a nightmare for Riot to balance ever since the rework. It feels like she's either been super OP, really good for solo queue, or she's been super weak. And unfortunately for Akali mains right now, she is on that super weak side. So if we scroll down here to our next assassin, I think next one up here is going to be Diana. So Diana for me right now is like, it's pretty close either between S+ and S. I'm going to put her in S though right now because she has been nerfed a little bit recently. She has dropped down in power a little bit. I don't feel like she's as OP as she was a couple patches ago. I still feel like she is a very strong assassin pick though right now. She's kind of like, I don't know, she's a mix between an assassin and an AP bruiser. She's just a really strong skirmishing mid lane pick. Once you get to level 6, her ultimate just makes her extremely strong in 2v2s. Your team fight can be completely devastating with the champion as well, and she's also very good in the 1v1. So I just feel like that's kind of the reason to why I have her like above Ahri. I just feel like she offers a little bit more. She has that good 1v1 potential, has the good one shot, but she also does have a little bit better team fight than Ahri does, and has the ability to kind of solo carry a fight a little bit easier. So next up here is going to be Ekko, and I'm going to be placing Ekko in the S tier as well. I know that people would definitely argue for him to be S+ tier right now. I think that for the mid lane you could argue that. I'd say for the jungle though right now, especially after the nerfs, he did receive a couple patches back, I do see him as an S tier jungler at the moment. I just think overall really good carry potential for solo queue. If you hit your 2-item spike on Ekko, extremely strong. You can just start taking over games. For mid lane Ekko, the reason to why I'm like hesitant to put him in S+ is because he still does have a lot of really bad early game matchups. You can be exploited pretty easily in the early game with Ekko if you're going up against something like Fizz or Caston or LeBlanc. He's just got a lot of lane counters, so I think that's one thing that holds him back a little bit from being in that S+ tier. So moving on to Evelynn now. Evelynn I think is in a pretty decent spot at the moment. She's definitely not S, definitely not S+ tier. For me, she's in between like B or A, but I'm gonna place her in A at the moment. After the buff she did receive a couple patches back, she has been doing much better in solo queue, and I do think that if you can play a good Evelynn, you can definitely take over games on the champion. She does have that weakness of like not really having an early game. You can't really impact the game early on with Evelynn, so champions like Ekko for example are a little bit stronger in that sense, because they can look to gank more in the early game. They can look to influence the map a lot earlier. But if you can get going on Evelynn, if you can get a couple kills, then her one-shot potential come mid to late game is just so disgusting, especially for the lower elos when players are just always out of position and they don't group up and you can just find picks. She can be a really devastating pick. So for our first S+ assassin, it is going to be Fizz. So the reason to why I rate him a little bit higher than somebody like Ekko, for example, is because he does have a little bit better of a laning phase and he does have some more kill threat early on in lane. I do think that Fizz does have more favorable matchups than the Diana and the Ekko at the moment. He also does have really good all-in threat at level 6. If you're going up against an immobile mage especially, it's a free kill at level 6 in most of your matchups, and especially once you get to that 40% CDR, your ultimate is on such a short cooldown with Fizz, so you can just constantly be looking for picks. And I just think that pick champions are really good for solo queue because you can just find that pick, make it a 5v4 for your team, and the chances of you just winning team fights after that becomes really good. So scrolling down here to our next assassin, hopefully I'm not missing out on one here. Just make sure I'm not missing one. It looks like it's going to be Caston. So Caston for me is going to be placed in the S tier. You could argue for S plus for this champion as well. I think Caston right now, very good matchups against most of the other AP assassins. He does very well into things like the Fizz, the Ekko, Diana, LeBlanc. He honestly doesn't really have that bad of a laning phase. Like one of the main weaknesses to Caston in the past is that you can exploit him pretty hard in the laning phase. Doesn't have the best early couple levels, but honestly that's not really the case anymore. Like against 80 champions, certain 80 champions, yes, you can struggle a bit in the laning phase, but you can just rush a Seeker's arm guard. That can help you out pretty easily. He's the best scaling mid lane assassin in the game by far, in my opinion. Like once you hit the level 16 on Caston, it should be a free win in most of your games. Even once you hit like 2 to 3 items, once you hit the level 11, you do have really strong carry potential at that point as well. So I just think Caston, very good assassin for the current patch. Next here for Katarina is going to be placed in the S tier. So similar to Caston, she does have a little bit of a weaker early game, bit of a weaker laning phase, can be exploited there. So that's one of the main reasons as to why I'm not placing her in the S plus tier. But I do think she's a great pick for solo queue just because she does thrive in that chaotic environment. Very, very good skirmishing assassin. If you can get into like early 3v3s and you can find your resets in fights, then you can just solo carry games with this pick. And also, even if you fall behind in the early game with Katarina, it feels like she's that one assassin to where as long as you get to your core build, as long as you get to your gunblade, you can still carry games on the pick and you can still be useful. So I think Katarina is a great pick at the moment. Now Kayn is rated, or he is classified as an assassin. I definitely think that red Kayn or Rast is much better at the moment. Whenever I see blue Kayn, I just don't really feel like it ever does anything. So I'm going to be rating him for this video, but I'm only going to be rating him in B tier. So I just feel like it's an okay pick. I don't know if it's just me, but whenever I see players go for blue Kayn, it just feels like even if they get ahead in the early game, or even if they do decent or they do well, they just end up throwing their lead really easily, or they just end up being completely useless later on in the game. I just think that going for the bruiser build of Black Cleaver Death Dance is just way more consistent on Kayn at the moment. So I would be staying away from playing Assassin Kayn if you're looking to climb in solo queue. So next here for Khazix is going to be making his way up into S plus tier. So this champion just got some unnecessary buffs here in 10.14, and that's going to bump him up into S plus. If this were last patch, he would be in the S tier or even maybe A tier, but after the buffs he did receive, he's a really good pick right now. Probably the best assassin in the game, or arguably the best assassin in the game now. So if you are looking for a really good jungle assassin pick to play, then Khazix would be my go-to for this patch. So moving on to LeBlanc now. LeBlanc for me right now is in between A and B. I think that if you're a really good LeBlanc player, then you could make her an A/S tier mid lane champion, but I just think that for your average solo queue player, she is a B tier pick at the moment. I just feel like the champions above her here, like the Ekko, the Diana, the Caston, the Fizz, they just are a lot more reliable in the sense that they have really good mid to late games. You don't need to snowball the early game with something like an Ekko or a Caston to be useful later on. I feel like you're way more reliant on getting early kills on LeBlanc to be useful. Like you need to get roll, you need to get those kills early on to be useful with LeBlanc, because compared to a lot of the other assassin picks, she just gets outscaled pretty heavily once you do reach like 30 minutes, once you hit that mid to late game. So depending on the LeBlanc player, you could move her up or down on the list, but for me, your average LeBlanc is B tier for this patch. So next up here for Noctor, and this is going to be dependent on what role you do play him, or his rating is dependent on the role that you play him. So for mid lane right now, he's definitely S plus. This champion is so underrated in the mid lane. Really good matchups. He's got really good laning phase. He does well into most other assassin picks. He can do pretty well into most mages as well, especially once you hit the level 6. You do have good one-shot potential. You have the ability to just instantly clear it away pretty much with your Q, with your passive Tiamat, and it can just allow you to roam very freely. You got great roam potential there with your ultimate at the level 6, so super underrated mid lane champion. For jungle though, right now he hasn't really been performing very well in the past couple patches. He's been a pretty relatively weak jungle pick, but he did receive some buffs a couple patches ago, so I am going to place him like in the A tier for jungle right now. So A tier for jungle and S plus tier for mid lane. Now the Pyke pick here, similar to Noctor, can be played in a couple different roles at the moment. You can either play him in the mid lane or in the support role. I think for both roles right now though, after the changes he got in this patch, he is an A tier pick. So when I think of Pyke right now, I don't really think of like an OP champion or a very strong champion. I feel like he's a good pick. I do think he's a good champion to carry within solo queue, but I don't think he's too overwhelming at the moment. After the changes he got this patch, it seems like it's brought him down in power a little bit, and with those changes, I do think he's now just solidifies himself as an A tier pick in both the mid lane and in the support role. So next up for Kiana, I'm going to be placing her in the A tier. So I feel like she is just a good mid lane pick at the moment, which is why she's in A tier. I just don't really think Kiana is like as OP as she was a couple months ago. There was one point to where she was just like super busted and she was one of the most OP mid lane champions, but she's just kind of fallen out of meta over the past couple months and she's just not really played a ton right now. But I do still feel like you do have pretty good carry potential with the champion. You can still go for the Tiamat rush, still go for Moby boots, roam around the map, impact the map really well, still have great one shot, great team fight potential with this champion. So I think if you can play her well, she is still worthwhile to pick up. So for jungle Rengar here, I am going to be placing him in the A tier. Now you could argue for S tier if you are a really good Rengar player, if you know your limits, if you played him a ton, then you can turn him into an S tier champion. But I just think that for your average solo queue Rengar player, that he is A tier at the moment. I just think that if you're looking for an assassin in the jungle in general right now, that Khazix is just a cut above. Khazix is just the better Rengar right now after the buffs he did get in this patch. So he's not a bad pick by any means. I still think he's a very good solo queue jungler that you can play, but I do think that there's other picks right now that just outclass him a little bit. So moving on to the Shaco pick now, he's another one that's hard for me to decide between S and A tier, but ultimately I'm going to place him in A tier right now just because with other junglers getting buffed quite a bit recently, like the Khazix, the Vi, the Karthus, and Shaco, I'm pretty sure did receive some direct nerfs a couple patches back. It has kind of brought him down in power level a little bit. I still feel like he's a good jungle pick, but there's a handful of junglers right now, probably like 6 or 7 junglers, I just feel like that are a cut above in the S or the S plus tier. So in my opinion, Shaco is an A tier jungler for this patch. So next we got Talon, and yet again another champion that's just kind of on the bubble at the moment. He's like in between S or A. It's hard for me to decide here, but I am gonna once again place him in the A tier. The champion has received multiple nerfs over the past couple patches now. He's been nerfed a ton, and with nerfs to like Conquer as well recently. I do think that it's finally dropped this champion down into A tier. Now for high elo, he does still perform pretty well. I do still think that for like Diamond and above or like Master above, you could place him in S tier, but I think that for the majority of elos and especially for the lower elos, he is now an A tier mid lane pick. And it looks like here the final assassin we'll be rating for this video is gonna be the Zed pick. So Zed did just get buffed here in 10.14. He is doing much better, and because of that, he's gonna be placed in the S tier. So previous patches, he would probably be an A tier for me, but after the buffs he did receive, I'm gonna be placing him in the S tier. So that's kind of another reason as well as to why Talon drops down a little bit. Like direct nerfs to Talon, also with like other assassin picks getting stronger like the Zed, it does kind of bring him down in power. But for the Zed in this patch, he's doing much better with the W buffs, with the speed on that missile being increased, with the cooldown on his W there being decreased in the early game. It really does help him out, and I think that he is now one of the better carry assassin picks for 10.14. Alright, so that is going to be all for the video, guys. That is my assassin tier list for patch 10.14. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video, and just let me know down below if you do agree with my list. I definitely don't expect you to 100% agree with every ranking I have of each champion in the video, but if you do disagree, then let me know what you would change down in the comments below. So with that being said, if you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already. So thanks for watching, have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.